One of my favorite builds in Expedition 33 guarantees you over 100 million damage in one shot before the enemy even gets a chance to go. And the best part is, it doesn't require a ridiculous number of Lumina points, and you don't need to have already beaten a bunch of endgame super bosses for the required gear. Plus, you can actually push it to over 1 billion with some simple optimizations. I call it the Gommage Master, aka the delete key, and it's all about being able to use Mael's Gommage gradient attack as fast as possible. Of course, that means you need to build up 3 whole gradient charges really fast, but you can actually do that really easily if you have Verso set up to generate charge with free aim shots and base attacks. The core Lumina you need to do that are Charging Alteration, Charging Attack, Charging Burn, Charging Critical, and Charging Mark. There are a few more you could add in here, but they're situational, so they don't always help, and you don't really need them anyway. We'll check out all the Lumina for everyone in a second, but basically you start the battle with Verso going first, and you just spam free aim shots until you run out of action points. You'll be able to spam tons of them like this because of a bunch of action point generating Lumina. The free aim shots will quickly get his rank up to S and nets you approximately 1 full gradient charge. Once you run out of AP, you just do a base attack to finish the turn. With combo attack 1, 2, and 3 equipped, the base attack actually hits 4 times, which, thanks to charging attack, will give you 60% more gradient charge. And then, because we've got the cheater Lumina, Verso gets another turn where we get to repeat that whole cycle. So spam a bunch of free aim shots again, and then do a base attack again to finish his second turn. By this point, you'll already be close to 3 gradient charges, and Ciel is going to give you the last bit. First, use her marking card skill to set up a mark on the enemy for Mael, and then on her second turn, use Fortune's Fury to give Mael a double damage boost. Spending those 8 action points total with Ciel gives 40% of a gradient charge, which should be more than enough to get you to 3. But now Mael's up, and you immediately want to use her last chance skill to take her HP down to 1 and activate Virtuose Stance. Between Virtuose Stance and the At Death's Door Lumina, this is going to boost her damage a lot. And then her second turn is when you get to Gommage. Just make sure you nail the QTE button timing for a perfect, and you should easily get over 100 million damage in one shot. But if you want to go for the big 1 billion, there's a couple key optimizations you need to make. First is Mael's weapon. What I just showed you was using Yevarum, which is a great option for this build because it maxes out Mael with 9 shields before she does her Gommage, which in turn maxes out the powerful shield Lumina. But Mael's new Eskium weapon from Verso's drafts is even better. Its level 4 perk will consume extra AP for another damage boost that lets you get to about 600 million. But the final boost for getting over the 1 billion mark comes from adding the Roulette Pictos. So yeah, there's some RNG to get the 1 billion, which I don't love, but hey, even when Roulette cuts your damage, it's still going to be like 200 to 300 million, which is still insanely strong. And even if you're earlier in the game and don't have Eskium or Yevarum yet, you can put this build together with a weapon like Medellum to still hit for tens of millions. But most of the damage boosts come from all the other Lumina besides Roulette, which you can see here. Technically, you don't need Charging Critical and Charging Mark in here, but since this is a gradient focused build, I like having those two so Mael can start the gradient charge cycle again with her Gommage. You don't need Dodger either, but for just 1 point, it's always nice to have as an easy way to gain action points if enemies do get a chance to attack. If you want to save 15 points, Warming Up is only a 5% boost, so you could drop that. But even with all the Lumina you see here, you only need about 160 Lumina points on Mael. As for her Pictos, Cheater gives her the extra turn, and equipping it as a Pictos saves you 40 Lumina points. Confident Fighter gives her 20% towards the 100% crit rate we want for her, and another one of the damage boosts we want. And Shortcut gives her another 36% towards crit rate. Plus, it actually gives Mael a third turn, which is really nice if you need to dish out more damage after the Gommage. For example, if you're dealing with multiple enemies, you can follow up with a Stenthal. But if you want to start building up Gradient Charge again, I'd actually recommend using Phantom Strike on her third turn. On top of the 35% gradient charge you'll get by using 7 AP, it also gives you a bonus 35% charge for a total of 70. But Mael's attributes are really important too. The exact numbers will depend on what level she is, but Medellum, Yevarum, and Eskium all scale with defense and agility. So after getting her crit rate up to 100, you want to prioritize dumping as many points as you can into those, and then put any leftover into might. And for her skills, just make sure you've got last chance to use on her first turn, and then you can equip whatever else you'd like. But Verso's weapon is actually a really important part of this build as well. You want to use Cereso because it applies a damage boost to the whole party based on his perfection rank. So that's one of the things helping boost Mael's damage. Fortunately, you don't need Cereso upgraded at all. Even a really low level Cereso works. Verso's Pictos are Energy Master, Greater Defenseless, and Combo Attack 3, all because we need their unique perks and they cost a lot of Lumina points, so better to equip them as Pictos. And then you can see all his Lumina here. We already talked about the handful of charging ones for building up Gradient Charge and the combo attack ones that make the base attack do more hits for additional Gradient Charge. Everything else here is purely to help regain action points when doing free aim shots. These make up the machine gun build you may have heard of. All of the energizing Lumina generate AP, but certain ones, like Energizing Powerful, need to be paired with the equivalent Shots Lumina that applies the required status. For Energizing Powerful, that'd be Powerful Shots, for example. And Exposing Attack is in here to apply Defenseless to the enemy, making them more susceptible to damage. All these Lumina on Verso require 208 points, and his skills and attribute point distribution don't matter much, so you can do whatever you'd like with those. But you need CL set up properly too, and she's going to do two things for you. On her first turn, you need to mark the enemy for another damage boost, so you need her marking card skill for that. And then she also needs to apply Fortune's Fury to Mael to give her a double damage boost. CL's weapon doesn't matter, you can choose whatever you'd like. And then for her Pictos, we have Charging Critical, which adds 35% to her crit rate and helps you get some extra gradient charge when she does the marking shot. And Energizing Turn and Energizing Start 3 both load her up with more AP to use. For Lumina, just make sure you've got Cheater so she gets 2 turns, and Energizing Start 1 and 2 for more AP. Oh, and First Strike, which you want on Verso and Mael as well to make sure the whole party gets to play first. CL only needs a total of 66 Lumina points. But for any build like this to work properly, it's really important the characters go in the order you want, and the trick for that is simply removing everyone from your party in the menu first, and then adding them back in the order you want. So first we have just Verso, then I'll add CL, and finally Mael. For any boss fight, this guarantees the characters go in the order you want. It doesn't matter what their speed stats are. I know the Verso's draft patch notes said they fixed turn ordering, but that only applied to regular battles where you do a first strike to initiate. So this trick to force the turn order still works as of patch 1.5.2. If it ever stops working, then you can just adjust attribute points to change each character's speed stat or play around with equipping different Pictos that give more or less speed. But if you've spent some time in Verso's drafts and got a few really good Pictos there, then you can put together another awesome build I call the Fire Paintress, which easily hits in the hundreds of millions too. Mael is going to be your main damage dealer again, and we still want to build up max gradient charges like last time, but this time we're going to use her Burning Canvas skill for the big hit instead of Gommage. So now, in addition to all the damage boosting Lumina we had before, you want to add in Feint, Frenzy, and Gradient Overcharge. Feint will apply the Barbapapa Cotton Candy Hands to Mael, which makes her first 4 hits of her attack do just 1 damage, but then on the 5th hit you get a whopping 600% damage boost. Then Frenzy pushes it even higher because it gives 10% more damage for each successive skill hit. And Gradient Overcharge boosts it even more by consuming the 3 gradient charges for another 200% boost. I'm also going to throw Shield Affinity in here for a 30% boost and Stay Marked for another 25% boost if the RNG gods favor us and let Mael leave the mark before her big hit. You're also going to need AP discount for this one because Mael's Eskium weapon is going to limit her to using just 4 AP. We want Eskium for its level 4 perk, which gives another 250% boost. Verso is going to function basically the same as last time, doing a bunch of free aim shots and base attacks to build up gradient charge, but this time we also need him to build up as many burns as possible on the enemy. Mael's Burning Canvas consumes up to 100 burns to boost its damage, so in addition to all the Lumina Verso already had, he also needs Burning Mark, Double Mark, and Double Burn to ensure you can build up enough burns. I've got Critical Burn added here to boost his crit rate and Greater Defenseless equipped as a Lumina this time because I made some adjustments to the Pictos to minimize Lumina points. You can also add Shielding Tint as a Lumina, which will let us get a bit more of a damage boost. CL is going to use Fortune's Fury to double Mael's damage again, but she also needs to help out Verso with gradient charging and burn buildup this time. So she's going to get a bunch of the same Lumina as him. Plus, I like to use a level 20 Lithosan as her weapon weapon to get some extra AP gain from her free aim shots. But for the battle rotation itself, it's very similar to last time. Spam free aim shots with Verso and finish with a base attack on his first turn. Then spam free aim shots again on his second turn, but don't do a base attack at the end of his second turn. Instead, use a healing tint on Mael to trigger the shielding tint Lumina and give her 2 more shields. On CL's turn, we pretty much do the same thing. Spam free aim shots to build up more burns and gradient charge, and do a base attack to finish off the first turn. On her second turn, do a few free aim shots again, but make sure you leave her with at least 5 AP so she can cast Fortune's Fury on Mael as her final move. Then on Mael's turn, you use Last Chance to get her HP down and max out her action points, which her Eskium weapon will immediately consume down to 4. Eskium also applies a mark to all enemies, so now you can just do the Burning Canvas, hit for 1 on the first 4 hits, and then watch for that big damage on the 5th. But getting the Pictos from Verso's drafts also lets you create a really cool build I like to call Dark Lightning. And this one's special because Lune gets to be the star of the show and deal over 1 billion damage. See, Lune actually gets her own Eskium weapon in Verso's drafts. It comes from cracking open the paint cage just down the hill from the first flag, and its level 20 perk gives her a 300% damage boost when she uses a skill attack while she has 4 Dark Stains. And its level 10 perk makes it super easy to get Dark Stains by converting any stains you've already got by simply doing a base attack. In its simplest form, this build actually just needs Lune and CL. On Lune's first turn, you use her Elemental Trick skill to generate 4 stains, and then on her second turn, you just do a base attack to convert those stains into Dark Stains. Then on CL's turns, you Fortune Fury Lune to double her damage and use Intervention to give her another turn. And that's when you use Lune's Lightning Dance skill to deal big damage. The first 4 hits will only be for 1 until she gets rid of the Barbapapa, but then the big numbers start rolling in for the other 8. But Eskium is just one part of what makes the Dark Lightning build so powerful. The other key factor is the combination of the Frenzy, Feint, and Double Third Lumina with Lightning Dance. See, the Lightning Dance skill is special because it will hit 12 times if you have Lune's critical rate maxed out to 100% to guarantee a crit on every hit. And with Frenzy boosting damage 10% for each successive skill hit, Feint giving a whopping 600% boost on every 5th hit, and Double Third doubling damage every 3rd hit, those 12 hits stack up to a ton of damage. Plus, of course, we can equip all the damage boosting Lumina we were using for Mael earlier. But Mael has her Last Chance skill to get below 10% health and activate the Death's Door Lumina. Lune doesn't have a skill like that, so to get her below 10% health, you need to give her Auto Death and Survivor, which when paired together, take her down to 1 HP automatically. I've also got some Lumina here that apply slow to the enemy and rush to Lune, which you don't strictly need, but they're nice to help give you more turns more quickly in case the battle requires multiple rounds. That applies to any build, by the way. For Pictos, we've got Survivor, Cheater, and Feint since we need all their perks and they're all expensive to equip as Lumina. And 2 of them give us a bunch of crit rate. Lune's attribute point distribution prioritizes agility and defense since that's what Eskium scales with. But CL's attribute point distribution doesn't matter much. You can just prioritize agility to help get more turns and defense to help keep her alive. Her weapon doesn't really matter at all, and for skills, just make sure you've got Fortune's Fury and Intervention like usual when she's running support. We need Second Chance, Energizing Turn, and Energizing Start 2 for her, so equipping those as Pictos minimizes Lumina point requirements. And then for Lumina, she's got the usual Energizing set to give her enough action points, but we're also adding in Auto Death to trigger Shielding Death, which gives more shields to Lune, so she gets more of a boost from the powerful Shield Lumina. With Second Chance, CL will come back to life after the Auto Death. But to max out the damage on this build and go for over 1 billion, you need to add Verso in. Basically, you want to set him up the exact same way we did for the Gomage Master build earlier, with the main thing being using his Cereso weapon. His Lumina set looks very similar to before, just slightly optimized for this build with Energy Master, Greater Defenseless, and Combo Attack 3 equipped as Pictos this time. And his attribute point distribution just prioritizes agility, defense, and particularly luck to make sure he gets lots of crits. For his turns, just like before, spam free aim shots until you can't anymore, and then do base attacks to both rank up and build up gradient charges. The best turn order for this build goes Lune first, then Verso, then CL so she can throw it right back to Lune with Intervention. You can use the trick we went over earlier to force the turn order. But you might have thought, hey, Verso's Steeled Strike actually does 13 hits, which is really similar to Lune's Lightning Dance doing 12, which means there's a cool variation of the Dark Lightning build where Verso can be a big damage dealer too. I call this one Duo Strike. Verso's Lumina gets set up very similar to Lune's, but we also need to make sure we have 9 AP straight away for him to use Steeled Strike, which means we don't want to roll the dice on spamming free aim shots anymore. So we're actually going to swap his weapon for Blood M, which will make him automatically start at rank S since we're using Auto Death and Survivor to get him down to 1 HP right away. But this weapon switch also means we need to re-optimize his attribute points, and that drops his critical rate quite a bit. So a better set of Pictos for him on this one are Energy Master, Alternating Critical, and Confident Fighter. And it's actually good to have his total crit rate in the 70 to 90% range here, because with Alternating Critical, if you happen to get a non-crit hit, it'll do double damage, which is actually more than the 1.5x damage you get with critical hits. It might seem like a 50% crit rate would be optimal for Alternating Critical, but if you get more than one non-crit in a row, you don't get the benefit. So it's actually more optimal to be in the 70 to 90% range. But the turn order stays the same for this one. Get Lune her 4 Dark Stains with her 2 turns, and then on Verso's turn, you just go straight for Steeled Strike and be ready to hit the QTEs because he's got 2 turns in a row from Cheater. So Steeled Strike is going to trigger right away. Depending on how upgraded you have Blood M and Verso's attribute points, you should easily do anywhere from 10 to upwards of 50 million damage with the 9 big hits. And then on CL's turn, just throw it back over to Lune for a Lightning Dance that does roughly 1 to 200 million damage depending on how many attribute points you've got for her. Keep in mind she's no longer getting the boost from Verso's Perfection, and we haven't built up 3 Gradient Charges yet, so Gradient Overcharge won't trigger until a later turn. So this build doesn't let you get as impressive numbers as the others, but it's still really high damage, and it's more flexible with 2 damage dealers and better for longer battles. You might have also noticed I often left Clea's Death and Shield Affinity out of these builds. Shield Affinity does give a 30% damage boost, which is great, but it makes shields way less effective, and Clea's Death is only accessible after beating one of the endgame super bosses. So in the interest of making these builds more practical, I wanted to show you what you can do without them. I also left out Lumina that apply Powerful because I was finding on 1.5.2 that it was actually lowering my damage output, but that could very well be a bug, so you'll want to play around with adding in Auto Powerful, Empowering Attack, SOS Power, and Greater Powerful. But if you're looking for all the best Pictos in Lumina like the ones we used in these builds, I covered all the best ones and where to find them in this video right here. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you over there in just a second.